Welcome to the Childcare Business Coach podcast with Evelyn Knight, where mindset mechanics come together for success. Evelyn Knight is the leader of the ECE revolution and is on a mission to touch 1 million children's lives through the elevation of the ECE community.
Hello and welcome, everybody. I am having some technical difficulties here on my side, so I am not exactly sure. Let's see, this means being live streamed. Where I'm being live streamed right now? My normal course did not work today. So I hope everybody finds us okay. And for my team, if you find it and you please help me share this. I had to pivot, and that's what we do, right? We plan on using one thing, something doesn't work, so we pivot and we find another way. But today I am actually joined by an awesome guest. And for those of you who are new to me, this is Evelyn Knight, and with the Childcare Business Coach podcast. I do apologize. I am a little flustered. I'm not usually this flustered, but with the technology issues I am having, I am completely out of my element right now. So I am going to bring my guest on, Alex Schiavone. And we are going to talk today about a lot of what we are facing in our world today when it comes to the struggles and the economic struggles in childcare centers. So let me bring her in really quick, and then I'm going to make sure. And most of us already know the struggles that we're facing today. I am a childcare center owner. Hello, Alex. And so Alex and I are going to talk about a lot of these struggles. Alex, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? We are live, by the way. I know I do have to apologize to you, and I've already apologized to everybody listening and watching and our future listeners on the podcast that I've had nothing but technical difficulties this morning. So you and I didn't even get a chance to talk behind the scenes like I usually do. So we're just kind of being thrown into this, but I do like natural conversations anyway. Yeah. You and I are both in this world. We both have a passion for the advocacy part of it and just really making sure all children have access to quality care and education. So why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Great. Well, I'll say, Evelyn, before I do that, just say this sounds just like a day in the life of a childcare director. So I think we're starting off well, and just everyone listening or watching knows that. So. Yes. Anyway, I'm Alex Schiavone. I'm the Executive Director of Friends Center for Children, which is an early care and education program in New Haven. We currently have 2 sites and are growing to 4. So we're in a rapid growth place. I also am very happy to be part of the Child Care for Connecticut's Future Coalition, which is a coalition that is working to advocate and create early care and education across the state of Connecticut. So
yes, that's awesome. And I have some clients in Connecticut, and I know you guys have had some very unique struggles, especially with hiring.
Yeah.
And my hat goes off to you in Connecticut. I know I work with a lot of people throughout the country. And when I hear people complain about how difficult the hiring process is, the rest of us have nothing on what you guys are going through. So
yeah. Well, I think all of us are managing different versions of it. We happen to be, it's an absolute crisis. I think a lot of people use that language, but we have 4,400 open spots, staffing spots. We have places closing classrooms around the way. And in addition, and it's really just a product of the way the system works right now. It really does not appropriately compensate people. So there's people not choosing to go into our field. And that's true across the country. Right. But we have a high cost of living in Connecticut, where we rank 36 with regard to how we pay our teachers. Why would anybody want to do it?
Yeah. Well, and it's beyond that too. It's not an easy job.
No,
it is not an easy job. And I know for me as a center owner and a former director, just my experience over the years, we would bring people in and they would think that this was just going to be fun and games, and they were going to play with children all day, every day. And my early years of being a director, I had so many people quit because of the reality of what the job really is. Yeah. So we've come up with techniques to overcome that hurdle, because I really want people to know what the reality is. And I
Yeah.
want those people who have that heart and the passion for children. But yeah, it's hard, even when you do finally hire and then they go in and the job wasn't what they thought it was going to
Yeah.
be. It isn't just playing with children all day.
Yeah.
And so retention is also an issue that we face. And
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're talking about the onboard. I mean, it's everything right now. Before we used to have sort of an area that was difficult, and now it's really from start to finish, right? So it's the applicant pool, because people are choosing not to be in this field. Then it's once they're the people who are sort of saying, I'm going to try this, coming in and then realizing exactly what you said, which is this is really for educators. This is a highly competent and trained professional who is in the classroom, really thinking about brain development and how children learn and how families, come together in community. So there's a lot of training that goes in there, and the retention piece of it. So how do you continue professional development and move people? So we've really thought a lot about that in terms of the language we use is the on-ramp, right? So we have people coming into the field at an on-ramp where they have no idea about children. They think they want to do it. And so we call them life interns, and they're people who come in and maybe want to experience it. And we put them in a position where their responsibility is that of a life intern, right? It's really to see. And then we have the assistant teacher role. Then we have the head teacher role. And so we think a lot about that. We have the support teacher, and that's helped by really creating expectations for the person that you have coming in that are not beyond their skill sets. So that was a really important piece that we learned.
And helping them to get that skill set. I know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is just vital for me as an employer. The way I've overcome the hurdle is I've just really chosen to become a mentor instead of, I have to see myself now as a mentor instead of an employer to a certain extent, and help these really take them from that support staff to raising up in that ladder. That way they do stay with you over the years.
Absolutely.
It becomes something more than just a paycheck. It's really teaching them that you're not just working for a paycheck. You're really making a life difference, and you're leaving a legacy that is going to be far beyond your lifetime.
Yeah.
But that being said, people still need to pay their bills, and they still need to pay their living, and we still need to be able to pay them competitive wages. So what are some of the thoughts you have on helping? Because on the other hand, we also are
we got to stay afloat. Yeah.
Parents. Yeah. We have to stay afloat, and we can't charge parents more than they can afford.
Absolutely.
So it's finding that balancing act.
Yeah. So, you've touched on so many things, but we're just in this impossible situation as business owners, right? We're trying to operate in a free market system where we can't actually charge the client what the cost is. Yeah. And that's the bottom line. It needs to be a subsidized system. We need to have government support to be able to function. And it's similar to, if you think about the schools, like there's nothing different between a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. There's a lot different, but you know what I mean? Like really, but at 5, they go to kindergarten, and at 4, the parents need to pay for it. And that's just a mindset in our country, in our community, that we need to get over. But so we have to be creative. I mean, I always say to people, I joke that if you want to hire someone who really is going to run a business well, hire a former director or a current director, because they know how to make a business work in an impossible situation. So imagine if you could actually run a business the way it's supposed to be run, which is having income to cover your expenses, like if they can do it. So we've had to be really creative about the ways in which we can compensate the educators that work in our industry. And we do that as a workaround to the system. At the same time, we try to change the system at the advocacy level. So some of the ways that we think about the women who, and I say women because we're 99% female at Friend Center. We're 92% around the country, but we're female dominated. So there's a lot of things we do. We think about that educator with regard to their whole being, right? So a lot of the women that come into our field, and just based on the way we've treated them over the years in their career, come with a lot of shame. Because they've been overburdened and under-resourced, and they're not paid well. And we sort of look at it as this, babysitting, what you mentioned before. Yes. And so we've spent a lot of time working through that and empowering people to recognize the fierce and amazing and awesome educators, brain builders that they are, right? So we have to do that sort of social emotional side. At the same time, what you said before, you have to pay people. They have to live. They have to be able to have a livable wage. So we realized that we couldn't. We pay above average industry. So in Connecticut, $34,000 is the average for a teacher even with a bachelor's. I mean, just really for full-time work, obscene, right?
Yeah.
So we pay well above that, but it's still not enough. I could say we're the best of the worst, right? It's still.
Yes. I really feel that completely. Yeah.
Like, it's great, but it's not close. So we surveyed our teachers and we said, what are your biggest expenses? Because we can't pay you more, but maybe we can take an expense away. Mm-hmm. And at the time we had 28 educators. Now we have 40. At the time, only one owned their home, and they all said rent was the highest expense. So we decided to, as a board and an organization, to say, okay, how can we take away rent expense? What we need to do. And so we worked with housing advocates, and we purchased some housing units. And now our teachers live in the housing units for free. And so their salary remains the same. So let's say, I'm just going to use an example. They were making $45,000 and now they have free rent. So it actually has increased their salary by the $12,000.
Right.
So they're making, a 52, whatever, they're making whatever based on their initial salary. And it just became a huge benefit. And because there was no way we could pay them $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 more a year in perpetuity, but we could find housing units at a one-time cost.
That is amazing.
Yeah. It's really, go ahead.
I think that's a great, what I want everyone to really hear what you're saying is thinking outside the box, because we are so limited on, well, we can't do this and we can't. And honestly, that is the problem right there, is we're so focused on what we can't do that we're not looking for those out of the box opportunities that we can do. Yeah. So I really hope more people hear how you guys have done this through housing and find other out of the box opportunities that are out there, because opportunities are endless when we open our mind to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're programmed, right? And our industry is so regulated, and it needs to be, right? There's licensing, some of it needs to be, some of it doesn't, but we could talk about that for hours. But when you have that mindset, you really have to work to change it, right? To say, okay, how do we do this differently? Because we can't do it the way we're doing it. This is a non-workable situation.
It's not working for sure.
Yeah. And so the other piece, after housing, it was food. So our next initiative is to think about, okay, how do we, as we provide food for our children, think about providing food for our teachers, so that expense is removed from them.
Right.
So, that's just sort of one of the things we've done, and it ties well together with the emotional well-being piece, right? How do people feel and invest in themselves to be their best selves?
Right. Well, and I love that you guys are doing all of this, not waiting for somebody to come to our rescue. As I think part of the big problem that we're facing right now is we're always waiting for the government or somebody to come to our rescue. Yeah. And I think that is one thing that is great about being in a free market, is that we can come up with our own solutions. Yeah. We can do our own thing. That being said, we also need to keep our voice being heard and advocacy, because we do need legislation. We do need to be seen. And like you said, why is it that we aren't paying attention to birth through 4 years old like we do K through 12, right? Yeah. So I do a lot of advocacy work in my state. And just about 3 weeks ago, I was on a call with our state governor and his board, and they were listening to the needs. I was the only owner, the only private business in childcare that showed up. And so that is something I think it's really important for us to know, that we need to start showing up for these things on the federal, local, all levels, because for what I do, I'm on the ground floor a lot, and I talk to a lot of owners, and I talk to a lot of directors, and I hear a lot of, well, we need this and they forgot us. But I think what we need to ask ourselves is, have we been reminding them that we're here?
Yeah.
Are we having a strong enough voice? Because when we unite and we speak out, we will be heard. But right now, there's not enough of us out there that are really advocating from that ground level in the private sector, just saying, hey, we can't do this anymore without your help.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so again, we're speaking the same language, right? Anyone who's in this field is feeling the same thing, trying to do the same thing. But the way I think about it, because you said, waiting for someone to come to our rescue, and that is a lot of what we do, right? Because there are like 3 steps forward and then everything gets taken back. So if you think about Build Back Better, and we're all waiting for that, and that was going to happen, and that was going to change our industry, or ARPA funds, the funding that came out through the because of COVID, sort of that has changed our industry, and that's all going to be taken away in the next, whenever 6 months, 8 months, like we're going to be done. And so the way we frame it or think about it is, we're not waiting for rescue, we're participating in our own rescue.
Exactly.
So we're out there and we are not at the table. So childcare is never at the table.
Yeah.
What's remarkable about that is childcare is the foundation of everything else, right? Our economy, the ability for people to work and then house themselves and feed themselves. I mean, all the things, mental health, educational health, for the child, developmental health, all these things that really are part of our industry. And we're not at the table, the decision-making tables.
Yeah.
And so we have to be really honest with ourselves about why that is.
Yes.
And it's because we're women. And it's because we're disproportionately women of color across the country. So until we reconcile that as a country, like our voice has to be forced.
Right. And we do. Yeah. And I love that you say our voice has to be forced, which we can do that.
Yeah.
We need to show up. We need to show up in bigger numbers. We need to have a loud voice right now. And gosh, when all this started in COVID, I think probably late 2020, early 2021, it's really when I started this platform, and I just kept coming on and saying, you guys, we're having our 15 minutes of fame right now, but we can't stop. We have to keep it going, because it is 15 minutes of fame if we don't keep it going. And it's pretty much today we are where I was afraid we were going to be there. We had our 15 minutes of fame, but we can keep it going. And it doesn't have to just be 15 minutes of fame if we keep up with the advocacy work. And I think what's important for not just the ECE world, but the United States in general to keep in mind is right now, if you look at the United States and our education system, we are so far behind the rest of the modern world. It's really ridiculous, and it's inexcusable. It is inexcusable for our nation to be so far behind. But if you look at the countries like Finland and Sweden that are at the top, they place their priority in early childhood education.
Yeah, of course.
And
parental leave and all the things that go around ensuring that humans have the strong foundation for all future learning.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. It should be. For people in our early childhood world that don't know, you should be embarrassed. Honestly, you should be, because the United States, with all of its wealth worldwide, we should be number one, but we're not even close.
I know,
because we're not prioritizing.
I think the last statistic that I saw was we're 37th in terms of rank of gross, national product, in terms of what we spend on early care and education, in terms of all the countries that are measured.
Yep.
And there's only like 38 that are measured. Right?
Yes. And we were 33rd in education, in overall quality of education. So if we're spending at the 37th level, we're 30, it kind of is up there.
And that matches.
Yeah.
Well, it's confusing to me, so much so from the economic perspective. So you've got the human perspective, which we know is not going to drive decision making, because if it did, it would have happened already. Right. So we can't say this is about human capital, because we're choosing to put our children in situations, sort of the youngest versions of ourselves. We're choosing not to invest in, right? That's so strange. And to us as people, why do we do that? So I think we have to look at it from the economic perspective, and we have to think about, right, that this idea that if we invest in this 0 to 5 range, we will have a return on that investment, at 13% per year. So why that investment is beyond all returns on other investments,
Absolutely.
right? So why that to me has to be, and it's happening. I mean, you see it happening in certain states, right?
Yes.
Chicago is doing great investments, Illinois, but in Chicago, and then in Vermont, Massachusetts. And so there are places that have, New Mexico, have taken Washington, D.C. I mean, there's that's a handful, right? I mean, we're actually moving. The question is, when are other states going to get on board? How quickly? What are they losing by not getting on board? And how do we make it happen?
Actually talking to a gentleman in our state legislature one day, and I was discussing with him and brought to him the preschool to prison pipeline study and just different data, and told him, if you really want to see our state change, and if we really want to see momentum within our communities, you got to focus on preschool. And his response to me was, his constituents vote for him to deal with issues of today, not issues of tomorrow. And I just was like, it blew me away. His answer is, I basically said, so you're not really concerned about our young children because it won't affect our society for another 15 years.
Right.
He pretty much said, yes, this is more.
I think that's absolutely right. Like the political life, the shelf life of this is so long, right? That it doesn't fall into the political cycles that we have.
Right.
And so how do we, I do think COVID can shift that narrative a little bit, because it showed the economic impact for the family unit, which is now. And we have moved toward this mindset that COVID's over, right? And it's done.
Right.
And our industry has not been able to adapt and adjust in the way that other industries are. I can't have teachers working from home.
Exactly.
We can't go on Zoom. We can't all these things that other industries have been able to do. So it has moved on for other people, and for us, it has not.
Well, and for those of you who listen to my podcast, and if you think you can do Zoom preschool, I'll be the first to say it is not culturally appropriate. It is not best practice for the children. When it was, my childcare center is inclusive, and at the height of Zoom, it was just absolutely heartbreaking for me to watch some of our children who we'd seen make leaps and bounds and who started to really grow and develop. Suddenly services were cut off, and they were trying to meet through Zoom. So I actually teamed up with a friend of mine, and who worked for the University of Nevada, and she started coming in and working with these children anyway, because we were so scared of the momentum that they were losing at the time. And she was the precautions she took were amazing, and it was amazing what we had to do, but we were wanted to keep, and it's actually something we kept doing over this. It was born in COVID, keeps on going. Where now we can, but those are the kind of things that, yes, we need to evolve. And that doesn't mean Zoom. We can't do this through Zoom. It has to be the in-person. We have to have these solutions. And it's just time for us to speak up, because right now, what the government funding we have received has sustained us, but it's going to stop. Pretty much done. It's pretty much
a cliff. Yeah, it is.
And so,
go ahead.
Yeah, so we just really have to start having that voice and making ourselves seen and heard.
Yeah. So you mentioned this idea of Zoom, and we pivoted and we called it Teachology, right? And we offered it, and it was fine for 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day. That's about it. It's not, so you cannot do, and it requires the parents' participation. Right. So parents cannot work if you're doing a Zoom preschool. So you're not meeting the needs of the family, nor are you meeting the developmental needs of the child. It's not a workable.
Well, and I would love to do a study myself in my own center at the differences we see in the children right now, like the 4 and the 5-year-olds who were those vital developmental periods during COVID, because a couple of the trends that we're seeing is that the potty training is very delayed. The other big one we're seeing is the communication is so delayed. And what most parents don't understand, and I wouldn't expect them to understand this, is that as language is developing, it takes that reciprocity of language. Like you and I stand in front of each other normally, right? You speak, I speak back, and we have this flow of dialogue back and forth. But so many children have been put in front of screens during this time that the communication is coming at them.
Yeah.
That when they come to preschool now and we try and speak to them, they just like stare back at us.
Yeah. Interesting.
And we don't have that reciprocal language. And my sister's a speech pathologist and she specializes in it. So I talk to her about it all the time, and she's trying to help me come up with a curriculum to correct the issue. It's become such a big issue. So again, these are just things that we need funding for.
I had a little bit of a laugh. I
saw that. There.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. So issues like this make it more necessary for us to even need more funding, because now we have more special needs and more issues we're dealing with. And so yes, I mean, I think you have so many amazing solutions where we do need to have that voice. It is going to take legislation, but we can't wait for them to come to us. First, we need to go to them and have our voice heard. Or secondly, like you guys did, think of these extraordinary out-of-the-box solutions.
Yeah, I was in Washington and meeting with a member of the administration, education administration, and their advice to us, because it was a group of early childhood providers, was that we need to provoke demand. And which to me was both so infuriating and also the reality, right? It's exactly what you're saying.
Reality. It is.
So to me, that's what we need to be doing. And the problem that I see, the obstacle that I see for that, and this is happening in our state, we have an Office of Early Childhood, which is unique and really wonderful. And it's been there for many years. And they have meetings and they're during the day because that is their working time. And it's our working time. I mean, it's not possible until you get to a certain size where I have someone who can step in for me, which is why I'm not on, I'm able to do this. Yeah. But most of us, you don't have that until you get to a certain type of center. So we don't have the opportunity to be at the table. So your numbers are limited in terms of your voice spaces. So it's about writing letters to the editor. It's about doing something like this, a podcast, or even a video of yourself making a statement, sending it out. Yeah. So those are signing a petition, coming together, we try to do a march, or we did rallies here in Connecticut, which spurred the National Day Without Childcare, but we did the Mornings Without Childcare here in Connecticut last year, 2 years ago now. So, I mean, those are the kind of things you have to do to, again, be out of the box and creative, because we can't show up at the things where they're asking us to be, right? It's not possible.
Yeah, but you make some good points. It doesn't have to be showing up live. You can write the letters, send the emails, tweet them, tag them on social media. You can get on the news. It's something I've found is not hard. Get on the news, but we have to have our voice heard. There's so many options.
I agree. You can calling is so great. Yeah.
Yes. Call them.
Yeah.
And don't underestimate their, oh my goodness, the term is slipping my mind. But when you call for like your senator or anyone in your state legislature, don't estimate their staff members. Their staff members do have their ear and have a lot of power. Build rapport with somebody. And honestly, pull on their heartstrings. I mean, it does work, pulling on those heartstrings. And it doesn't have to be that specific person. The people around them do have their ear.
Yeah, I had some great, we had some great trainings on how to have those conversations. And the analogy that they gave us, which has just stuck with me, is head, heart, hand. So head, like the intellectual sort of side of it, heart, which is what you just talked about, the story, the string, and then hand, what are you asking for? Like, what is the thing you want from them? So I always go into all of these meetings now with that sort of cheat sheet in my head.
Well, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So head, heart, hand.
Well, Alex, this has just been wonderful and so much amazing information. I am going to stop the recording in a minute, but if you would stick on, I would love to chat with you a little bit after. But thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. It's really lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining Evelyn today. For more information, please visit childcarebusinessprofessionals.com.